afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our show. Today we're going to be talking about preventing groin injuries. So let's start by taking a look at one of our videos.
On the ice, gives the Islanders a nice lead. Rick DiPietro, watch him stretch out there. Looks to me like it's his right side. You can see him trying to get up, struggling. You know he's hurting, but he battles because the puck's still alive. Makes one.
Oh my goodness.
That was bad.
Oh, painful.
Before we get started, can all of you at home discuss what you know about groin injuries and what different methods athletes do to decrease their risk of injury?
Welcome back. Now let's talk about the implementation of sport-specific training and its role in the reduction of groin injuries. We have read several studies on this issue and have a couple guests who are able to share their training experience with us. What we hope to learn today is as follows.
To get us started, we have Dr. Burgundy here to discuss the different types of injuries that are common in sport.
The groin region can be thought of as where the abdomen meets the lower limbs via the pelvis. There are three major types of groin pain to know about: the adductors, the iliopsoas or the hip flexors, and the abdominal wall. After groin injury, rehab should not be looked at to the local structures, but rather to global core stability, as it is more appropriate than isolated exercises. In other words, we want to train the whole body and link the lower legs and the upper body together.
Well, thank you for being on our show. It was very informative.
Yes, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Applause.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Ice hockey and soccer players seem particularly susceptible to adductor muscle strains. In professional ice hockey players throughout the world, about 10% of all injuries are groin strains. A Level 1 randomized clinical trial found that the incidence of groin pain in male soccer players is 10 to 18% per year. In a cohort study, adductor-related injury was the most common diagnosis, comprising almost 3/4 of all cases studied.
Activities that involve running, quick changes in direction, kicking repetitively, and physical contact have a high risk of groin injury because the ratio of adductor to abductor muscle strength is imbalanced. This muscular imbalance is thought to be a causative factor of adductor-related groin pain because the muscular fatigue and overload could lead to impaired function, thus increasing the risk of injury. The adductors act as stabilizers of the hip joint, so if the hip joint is disturbed, it is no longer stabilized and the risk of injury increases.
Hockey players strengthen their abductors without progressively strengthening their adductors, which leads to growing strains because the optimal ratio is imbalanced. Results suggest that the best predictor of a future groin strain is when the adductor to abductor muscle strength ratio is less than 80%. So I wonder what kinds of injury prevention methods are out there to help athletes have success in reducing their risk of injury.
Yeah, there's actually been a recent hype in the media about sport-specific training.
Oh.
Twist Conditioning is a sport-specific training center that offers an 8-week summer hockey camp. Let's check it out.
Cool. Risk factors of groin injuries in ice hockey include increased athletic demands, velocities, and contact,
Greater abductor to adductor strength ratios,
less preseason sport-specific training,
core muscle weakness,
having a previous groin injury,
and rushed or inadequate rehabilitation. Sport-specific exercises increases an athlete's eccentric strength and ability to control and stabilize, which is an important quality to have when playing sports that require the production, transfer, and control of force and motion. Sport-specific strength will help an individual produce a lower center of gravity, which contributes to the development of greater dynamic stability. In theory, increased movement velocity that mimics the tasks of one sport should help to increase the rate of force development as well as overall power output.
That seems to make sense. Focusing your training on skills that you'll be using in your sport, and it leads to greater skill and injury prevention.
Yeah.
That's really good.
And now joining us is Mr. Mitchell, a seasoned hockey veteran who's here to tell us about the training he does to prepare for an upcoming season. Okay, now Mr. Mitchell, what kind of training do you do in the off-season?
Oh, you know, just bicep curls, little triceps extension, basically a beach body workout here in LA.
Willie Mitchell's off-season training regime consists of general, non-sport-specific exercises. He has not taken advantage of the benefits of sport-specific training, and as a result has missed 54 games in the last 3 seasons. Well, that's an interesting point that you don't do any specific training, because according to this blog post in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, based on a cohort study, it shows that if you have less than 17 sport-specific training sessions in the off-season, your likelihood of injury increases by 3 times. So why don't you do sports-specific training if you missed like 10 games a season?
We won the cup last year, right? So it doesn't really matter.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for coming, and the best of luck with you in your future season.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce the newest draft pick of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Mr. Morgan Riley, to the show. Welcome.
Thanks. Nice to meet you all.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So what would you say are the benefits of sports-specific training?
Sport-specific training has really helped me become less prone to injury and prepare me for a faster-paced game of hockey. The old style of hockey training used to be, okay, go to the gym, lift whatever you want, but now we've developed such a fast-paced game that we need to constantly be training ourselves in the off-season to a very specific sport, because otherwise you're going to be slow and you're not going to be able to keep up with the rest of the players because it's so competitive.
That makes sense.
By focusing on sport-specific exercises, the athlete can develop improved strength and agility in the actual groups of muscles used when playing the sport. It has been found that exercising muscles at the specific angle at which they are utilized in a particular sport significantly improves one's skill in that sport.
Level 1 evidence suggests that strengthening the adductor muscles, not just the abductor muscles, is the most important part of sport-specific training. This is very important because eccentric hip strength is necessary in a number of components of soccer and hockey, which include kicking, accelerating, and making sudden changes in direction.
A level 1 randomized clinical trial found that sport-specific training had long-term effects when participants were studied 8 to 12 years following the sport-specific training regime that they participated in. This seems to show that this kind of training, really works for people and it's long-lasting.
Yeah, for sure.
Another level 1 randomized clinical trial compared an active training program with a traditional physiotherapy program when treating severe adductor-related groin pains in athletes. They found that specifically training the adductor muscles was effective in treating athletes with long-standing groin pain.
So based on these two studies, we can infer that specific exercises targeting the adductors and other muscles around the hip joint can be used in preventing groin injuries for athletes who include these into their off-season training. We'll take a short commercial break. Don't turn that dial!
Welcome back to our show. Morgan Riley will now be teaching us some of his sport-specific exercises.
Alright, so the first exercise we have for you today is called a supine hip extension, also known as a bridging exercise. So what we're going to do here is we're going to lie down on our backs, make sure that our feet are planted nicely on the ground, and as we drive up for 1, 2, 3 seconds, we're going to be squeezing our butt cheeks or squeezing our glutes, making sure that we activate them nicely, holding at the top, pausing, and then releasing back down. This just allows us to activate our gluteal muscles to stabilize the hip and groin to prevent injury. Our second exercise is going to be with the resistance bands. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get the resistance band and loop it underneath your legs. Alright, what we're going to do here is make sure that your feet are parallel. Alright, our knees are tracking nicely over our ankles so the knees aren't inwards or outwards. Okay, and our core is braced, and all we're doing is we're taking a step forward and then coming back together again, step forward, coming back together again. Okay, so that is working the abductor muscles. Alright, abductor muscles. That's very important. Okay, and then the third exercise is working the adductor muscles. Now this is to balance out that ratio like we were talking about earlier. So we're going to take the ball. You can also use a Swiss ball if you like, or a medicine ball or anything, and you're just squeezing together, alright? So that is working the adductor muscles. Alright, so like I said again, we want to make sure that we have that optimal ratio. We can also do exercises such as lunges, alright, lunging forward and lunging backwards on each leg. Those are just some simple exercises that prep all the muscles around the hips.
Great. Thank you.
Now we want all of you at home to try these exercises with a partner.
Now that you have tried the exercises, let's test your knowledge on what we have taught you today.
Well, ladies, audience, viewers at home, we sure learned a lot today.
Definitely. So we hope you all enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week.
Stay classy.